Good morning. So we will start in about a minute. Please find a seat. And if folks could squeeze in the middle, if there's an empty seat in the middle, move to it, please. Make sure all cell phones are on silent. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. How's everyone doing? That's right. Thank you for joining us today for Family Forum 4, the Army Senior Leaders Town Hall. And thank you also to the Washington Tattoo. They were amazing. I hope you got to hear them. So let's give them another round of applause. Today, our sponsor for Family Forum 4 is the Wounded Warrior Project. They have been our sponsor and for this town hall for several annual meetings, and we are so, so grateful to your enduring support. A special thank you to Lieutenant General Retired Mike Linnington for his partnership with AUSA and for being a great supporter to Family Readiness and all our soldiers and our families. So, sir, would you and your team like to please stand? We would like to say thank you. At this time, we would like to recognize the AUSA Volunteer Family of the Year. The annual award recognizes an exceptional Army family whose dedicated volunteer service promotes the well-being of soldiers and their families and improves their local community. So, I don't know if you know this, but to be considered as the AUSA Family of the Year, you can only be nominated through the local AUSA chapter. So if you want to nominate next year, make sure you do that through our chapters. The Volunteer Family of the Year program is sponsored by Veterans United Home Loans. And at this time, I would like to invite Sergeant Major Retired Edison Rebuck of Veterans United Home Loans to join me on the stage to present this year's award to the family. So this year's award goes to the Shipley family, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Jody Shipley, his wife, Emily, and their 3 children, Grace, Gage, and Haley. They were nominated from our AUSA Central Texas chapter, whoop, whoop, and are also the 2023 Volunteer Family of the Year for Fort Cavazos, Texas. So would the Shipley family please join us on stage? The Shipley family embodies the phrase family readiness. In the past year, the Shipley family has logged more than 1,000 hours supporting several events and organizations. This includes more than 560 hours supporting the Troop Battalion Soldier and Family Readiness Group, thank you, in serving the unit that has more than 600 soldiers in a hospital that employs more than 2,000 Army civilians and their families. The Shipleys also spent more than 360 hours volunteering and supporting many events at the Memorial Christian Academy, at the Memorial Baptist Church, the Colleen Food Bank, and the Garden of Hope, which is a shelter for children entering the foster care system. They are known for making a difference every single day in the lives of everyone they meet through their selfless service and working together as a team. Truly inspiring for all of us. So, Shipley family, it is with heartfelt gratitude that AUSA and the Family Readiness Directorate, along with the Veterans United Home Loans, presents you with our token of appreciation to include a monetary gift. We also have another gift on the stage. And also an internship opportunity for Ms. Shipley if she's interested in support of military spouse employment. So at this time, Sergeant Major Rebuck and I would like to present you with a gift. Thank you, Shipley family, for your outstanding service, generosity, passion, and commitment to our military community. Thank you. So something new this year, we are introducing Mentimeter to encourage audience engagement, and this adds real-time voting functionality to help guide the topics our Army senior leaders will discuss during the town hall. Attendees can vote for their favorite topics using the QR code from their smartphones and other devices, allowing the most popular areas of interest to rise to the top of the list. This technique not only engages the audience, but also provides valuable insight into the topics that matter the most to you. Now, at this time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Lieutenant General Kevin Vereen. He's the Deputy Chief of Staff of Installations for Installations G9. Lieutenant General Vereen is the Principal Advisor to the Army Senior Leaders on installation policy, plans, and resources. And this includes housing, childcare, and other quality of life programs for all components. Installation armories and reserve centers serve as the Army's foundation and support for the readiness and well-being of soldiers, civilians, families, and soldiers for life. So, sir, thank you so much for agreeing to moderate this town hall, and welcome to the stage, Lieutenant General Breen.
Hey, good morning. Wow, everybody's asleep, so okay, good. It's a good way to start off. When you shoot the QR code, you will not get a menu, I hope. It won't reflect a menu. A food menu, that's what I'm talking about, so. All right. So good morning. Before I begin, I want to thank AUSA, and I also want to recognize Holly for her work on these family forums. It's been a great week, and the forums have been really, really wonderful. They provide a great opportunity to discuss important readiness issues facing our Army. Thank you for being a great partner, AUSA and Holly, and an advocate for our Army families. It is my honor to moderate this year's AUSA Army Senior Leader Town Hall. Army families make selfless contributions to strengthen our warfighters and the nation's defense. The Army is committed to providing the care, support, and services needed to ensure a ready and resilient Army. At this time, please give a warm Army welcome to our Army senior leaders. First, I would like to introduce the Honorable Christine E. Warmoth, the 25th Secretary of the Army. Honorable Warmoth is a senior official within the Department of Defense for all matters relating to the U.S. Army and has over 21 years of experience working in the field of national security and defense. Secretary Warmoth is here to provide an update on all the work the Army is doing to support soldiers and families. She is married to a retired Navy officer, and they have two daughters. Ma'am, I've already
He's a really
cleared the
good
room.
guy.
There are no eggs or anything, so they won't be throwing them.
Skipper.
Great. The 41st Chief of Staff of the Army, General Randy George, is also here to share his insights on his efforts to improve warfighting readiness and quality of life programs for our soldiers, families, Army civilians, and soldiers for life. I also want to recognize his wife, Patty, who's here, and they have 2 children. All right. And last but not least is the 17th Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major Michael Weimer. He brings his perspective. Wow, you've got some fans out there.
Sorry, sir. Sorry.
You can collect later.
We'll see if that happens in 50 minutes.
Yeah. He brings his perspective on soldier family support and has a direct impact on Army readiness. He is married to Kimberly, and they have 2 children. Army senior leaders, thank you for joining us today. Let's give them a round of applause. All right. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start the opening remarks from each of our leaders and then do something we've never done in this town hall before. So I will now turn it over to the Secretary of the Army.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for all of you for making the time. It is great to see all of you. This is, I think, the largest family forum we've had since I've been secretary. So that speaks to, I think, the level of interest in all of the things that we're doing to support our soldiers and our families, our civilians, our retirees, et cetera. I really try to make it a point when I go to visit installations to not just go see training, go see the motor pools, but also go see our CDCs, talk to our spouses, go and see, a lot of our quality of life programs. It's one of the ways that I find is most effective for me to hear concerns about, what kinds of things are on people's minds. And I've also spent a lot of time trying to look at housing and barracks. And I know that we have work to do. We are an enormous organization with an enormous inventory of housing and barracks. We have a lot of fantastic programs to help take care of families, to help families be resilient. And we know that there's always continuing work to do. But I think we've also done a lot in the last few years to make sure that we're supporting our soldiers and families. We put a real emphasis on expanding the number of CDCs that we have. We've built, I think 6 different new CDCs over the last couple of years, and we've got at least 5 more coming. One of the things we're really working on, and I'm sure this is something many of you have seen, is increasing the staffing at our CDCs. So we're doing that by, raising what we pay our workers, giving folks 50% off for their kids if they come and work in the CDCs. We've tried to actually decrease the amount that families below $130,000 pay to have kids be in our CDCs. So we're really trying to get after that, because I know childcare is a huge issue. And I know for me as a mom, that was one of the hardest things I had when my kids were young, was really trying to find childcare for them. We're also doing a lot to invest in barracks, to invest more in sustainment of our barracks. We continue to work with our privatized housing companies. And we're also really focused on spouse employment. And I think, one win this year was finally getting the Italian government to agree that our spouses could work remotely, taking jobs in the United States. So that's a win I'm really pleased about. So I just want to assure you that we are listening to your concerns. This will be a great event for us to hear more from you all. And just thank you again for being here.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. First, I want to give a shout out to the Shipley family. And I think that kind of represents, it's been my experience, we got so many wonderful families in our Army that are a great part of their communities, and I thank you guys for being such a great example. I've moved around several places, like many of you in the room, been to all different kinds of installations. I think you heard me talk about yesterday. I think that every installation is a little bit different. And one of my frustrations kind of growing up was that everything had to look the same all over the place. And again, if anybody in here has been to NTC, the National Training Center, they know that that's very different than Fort Wainwright. So I do think that we have to take the mindset that we are looking at solutions that really serve our families locally, and then have the ability to scale up where things are working. But it doesn't have to necessarily be the same everywhere we go. And I think we can do that more efficiently, provide better to do that. So I think that that's critically important. The other thing that's always been a frustration, and the Secretary and I talked about this, was we have a lot of really good programs that are out there. We're doing a lot. And oftentimes it's hard when you show up at an installation, especially if you're brand new. And I'm looking around at all the people in uniform, and you know what it's like to show up at a location and not necessarily know where to go. So how important that welcoming is when you show up someplace, and being able to find the right resources. So hopefully if you haven't done it, I know they're rolling out kind of what we're doing with the app, and we are going to build an app. I've had a couple of briefs on it. We gave them about 30 days, I think, to come up with something that would be really good. And we've got a couple of captains and some NCOs that are working on this from the software factory, and I think they're going to have a great solution. So I would invite you to look at it. Right now it's just we're doing it for Fort Cavazos, but it is going to be something that people are going to want to download, and I think that that's important. So you can have all the programs out there that are great, but if you don't know how to access them, you don't know how to find them, then that's very frustrating. The other thing that I think that we have to do, and over the last 2 months, all of us have, I know the Sergeant Major of the Army and I have been out visiting our troops, and whether they're in Europe or on an exercise in the Pacific, people are very happy to do their mission. What is frustrating oftentimes is predictability. People like to know what they're doing, when they're doing it, and have some level of predictability. So we may not talk about that in here specifically, but that is going to be one thing that I think that we have to be laser focused on, is making sure that we have training schedules that are out. I know when I would show up at an installation, even if it was the summer, it wasn't 45 days, and my wife was asking me, okay, can we make plans for the holidays? What's going on? And people want to know that. So I think that that's really important to quality of life. And the last thing I'll mention, I know we're going to have a bunch of good questions, is every one of our installation has Army Family Action Plan. So I know I did this, and I've been a senior installation commander at Carson and out at JBLM, and I'm encouraging everybody, and for all commanders out there, get your folks together, get your soldiers and families together, find out what's needed in your local community, what you're doing, and they need to do to help. We will take a lot of those, we take all those suggestions, and we review this twice a year. General Pyatt's up here, he just did that this summer, and we're able to solve problems that are Army-wide. But a lot of those problems, those ones that can't be solved locally, will come up here, and we want to help with that.
Hey, everybody. Appreciate those claps out there. I'm not sure who that was, but thank you. Thank you. No, you know, this is an event that I know everybody looks forward to, and I'm going to be short and brief to get to the questions so we can start having some dialogue. But I have a very non-traditional 30 years of service myself, but I have a very traditional upbringing in the Army as an Army brat. 3 tours overseas for a total of 9 years, lots of moving around, 3 different high schools. I'm a product of Doty schools. And so I do feel confident to be able to speak in this space. But I also learned a long time ago to leverage the strengths that I have, and one of those is my wife. And I'm fortunate that she's really 3/4 of Team Weimer. She's been able to travel with Patty and the chief and I. And for those of you, that might be where the claps came from. For those of you that were maybe coming from Alaska or Cavazos, from 2 of the most recent trips, that you know Miss Patty and Kimberly are absolutely diving into a lot of what we're going to talk about today. And I think it's important for you to know that you know that is a priority for us, and that information goes directly to, you know, if Kimberly and I are on a trip separately, to the chief and the secretary. If we're on a trip together, it goes straight back up to the secretary. And I just think that's important for you to know. It's not just our perspective that's making it up this high. It's a spouse's perspective, and I know, having been in this uniform for a while, I have a different perspective than my spouse. And so I just wanted to share that, and I look forward to the discussion.
Great, awesome. Okay. All right. So as Holly mentioned earlier, we will use an interactive presentation program called Menti for live polling to see what topics are out there and that are important for you today in this discussion. As we cover topics today, if you have a question in the audience, please write it down on one of the question cards, and someone will come by and pick it up. We also have mic runners, and they will run a mic to you if you want to ask a question in person. If you are attending virtually and you have a question, please use the live chat. We have incredible experience and expertise today, and we look forward to the great discussions that we're going to have. So we're going to start with an icebreaker, a few icebreaker questions, just to understand who we have here and get acquainted with this app, Menti. Okay, all right. So, are you attending virtually or in person? I hope you know where you are. Wow. That's nice. Uh-oh, there we go.
It's pretty neat. Mm-hmm. Still going.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we have a pretty good idea of where people are today, so Yeah.
Hopefully the fire marshal doesn't.
Yeah, I hope there's no fire code. I think it's 500, though. We'll be good. Okay, all right, so it looks like predominantly in person, so that's great. So it'll be some great live discussion here. And we do have folks virtually. I don't want to discount them as well. All right, the next question. Are you a soldier, family member, DOD civilian, contractor, or other? Wow, okay. It will continue to populate, but I think right now it looks like we've got more uniform. We've got a lot of family too. Quite a bit of Army civilians. It's great. So we kind of know who's in the room. Okay, all right, we'll let that continue to populate. The next question. Let's see the experience you have with AUSA. Let us know how many times you've been to our AUSA conference. Okay, good. Awesome. Good. Okay, it's still populating. All right, so we have predominantly soldiers here. We have, the experience is pretty high. We've got quite a bit of family members as well. So, all right, and we got more people here in person. So, all right, so I think we'll let that continue to populate. Now, we're going to get to the first question, which is going to be, again, input from you all in the audience. All right, what are your quality of life concerns that you would like our Army senior leaders to discuss with you today? Ooh, okay, all right. Wow, that barracks is
No shortage of topics.
that's all on me and Omar. Awesome.
That's a lot of topics.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
okay.
topics.
All right. Okay. So it looks like okay. I have a good read, I think. So,
I think we got the idea.
I'm gonna let
So
the secretary.
we'll be here for 3 hours.
So I'm gonna let the secretary start. I think we got a good feel of what was occurring there. It looks like, so Secretary, if you want to kind of talk about some of the things you saw in the middle, I think it was barracks, spouse employment.
Sure,
so I'll start
absolutely.
With you.
So what I saw as sort of the big three
Yeah.
were barracks, housing, and spouse
Yes.
employment. So I'll start with barracks. I think this is an area where we've really put a lot of time and money into, and we will continue to do that. But as I said in my keynote on Monday, we're the service with the largest inventory of barracks. And we have a $6.5 billion backlog to really, bring all of our barracks up to the kind of standards that we'd like them to meet. And that's going to take some time. But we are making progress. We have been investing $1 billion a year across all three compos in barracks, mainly focusing on permanent party barracks, but not exclusively. The chief and the SMA and I are working as we put the finishing touches on the FY25 budget that we'll send up to Congress and talk to them about in the spring. We're trying to, increase the amount that we're spending on military construction for barracks. And we're really working, and I think this is going to be important, to be able to fully fund sustainment for our barracks. We have been sustaining our barracks at about 85% for the last few years. And I think if we're able to get that up to 100%, that will help us, at least try to keep us from falling behind in some of those aging barracks. We're also really trying to work on improving our oversight, frankly, of barracks. I'm sure many of you saw the various news articles about the recent GAO report, which was talking about the entire department, not just the Army, but we're going to take all of those recommendations on board. We're having a barracks summit at the end of this month to really bring people together to talk about how we can improve our oversight. We did a survey of permanent party barracks, I think at 5 different barracks, to try to hear from people what their concerns are. So we're doing a lot in that area to really try to make sure that our soldiers are living in the kind of accommodations that they deserve to live in and that we want them to live in. But I would also ask that you be patient with us, because we do have a pretty flat budget, and we want to make sure, obviously, all of our soldiers have the equipment they need, the training hours they need. You know, we obviously want to make sure that we're investing in salaries and all of the other things that we have to pay for. So, you know, we're not going to be able to solve everything overnight. One thing I will say as I shift to housing, something we are going to do, I think, is explore potentially a privatized barracks. The Navy has a privatized barracks, I don't know if that's what they call it, out in San Diego. I think it's called Pacific Beacon. And we are talking about potentially doing something like that starting at Fort Irwin. There's a lot of issues potentially with privatized barracks. That would be a big shift. But it's something we're looking into because it may work in some places. It may make sense for us. On privatized housing, you know, again, we continue to work with our privatized housing companies to try to make sure that we're increasing our inventory and maintaining our inventory. One thing we've really been focused on when I've talked to CEOs of those companies is pay attention, you know, make sure that you are recruiting and retaining a workforce that has a customer service attitude, because, you know, we want to see improvements in responsiveness to maintenance orders. And I think in the communities that I've visited, for example, I was at Fort Leonard Wood not too long ago, I did generally hear that work order responsiveness times are improving. So that's something that I think is a good thing. I'll just stop and kick it over to the chief and the SMA, but spouse employment. This, I'll be honest, is one of the things, you know, in my tenure where we still have work to do on spouse employment, trying to help create more options for that. We're really looking at, you know, what can we do with direct hire authorities. We have the My Career Advancement account that gives up to $4,000 for spouses who want to get educational opportunities. I think we've got over 1,300 spouses who have taken advantage of that. But one of the things I'd like to see us make more progress on is getting states to actually implement the law that Congress passed, saying basically that your professional licenses should be transportable to any state in the country. And we've seen, frankly, uneven implementation of that. So that's something I think we need to really continue working with governors all across the country to get that law implemented.
Okay, I'm just going to add to what the Secretary talked about. So the other thing that we need to do is to increase, and this gets to oversight, but also just helping us generally on our installations, is our Department of Public Works have been cut, I think, in some cases too much. Our engineers, the people that do some of the oversight, that start to do the future planning, we've gone through some of these budget drills in the past. So the other thing that we've asked everybody to look at, and I see General Jones is right up here shaking his head up and down, is what do we need to do to increase, get the right expertise at our installations to make sure that we are doing the right things by our housing, our barracks, and all of that they oversee. The other thing that, and the Secretary and I were talking to some professional staff members last night, I think we have to take a look at the rules to be more efficient. There are a lot of rules that we are implementing in, you know, for our dollar doesn't go as far, I think, as it could, because there's a lot of restrictions on how we have to spend our money and what we have to do. And so part of that conference that we're doing here later, and we're getting with the Corps of Engineers, with the Installation Management Command, is to see what we can do to go back and ask for some relief on that with Congress. And I'll give you another example I was just out at JBLM, and we have SHPO is another one, which I love historic sites, but the Army has a lot of historic stuff out there, and some people call it historic, and some people call it old. I might be in the latter category. And so we we spend a lot of money to try to upkeep stuff that, to fit a certain requirement, and I think that our money could go a lot further. We could do a lot more, so I think we have to look at that. On spouse employment, the only other thing I would add is that, and this gets to getting information out, I think since 2019, and we have spouse licensure reimbursement across the Army, I think we've only given out to like 800 spouses in 4 years. So there is a process out there to do that, and we just got to make sure. I know that there's been a lot more than 800 spouses that have, gone through the licensing process, and we, have something in place to reimburse them, but they're not taking advantage of it. So we got to do better at getting the information out. If there's other problems with that, let us know what that is, but I think that's a big benefit. And the Secretary mentioned, state to state, we don't control what each individual state does as far as licenses being good in each state. But trust us, we are talking here on the Hill to the congressional members, and then I also encourage all the installation commanders out there and sergeant majors to talk to their local, because that's really what will make a difference.
Really, the only thing I'll add on there on the barracks is we're getting ready to do the barracks summit, which is it's a big event for us, and we're going to be talking about quite a bit about this. One on the sustainment side, but also on what do new barracks what should they look like in the future? A barracks is a place where cohesive teams should be built. Barracks is a place where we should know our squad mates, and so we're getting ready to get after that. I look forward to that, sir. I see MCOM, G9, and AMC is all part of that, and that's a piece to this also, because every dollar that the Secretary referenced that we're going to increase in sustainment and that we're going to put into future MILCON for barracks, we got to make sure it's right.
Okay, we got the mic in the audience.
Good morning, Madam Secretary. My question is, in recent years, we've received much-needed pay increase and BAH increase to counter the cost of living. However, as soon as those pay increases are announced, the surrounding community increases the cost of living and the rent. In the last year, my rent has gone up and matched every single BAH pay increase. So it has made no difference to my yearly income. My question is there anything we're going to put in place to protect service members as they get these pay increases to counter the cost of living so that we can actually not live paycheck to paycheck anymore?
Do you want me to?
Sure, you can start.
So where are you? What
I was gonna say,
installation
yeah,
are you
where are
at?
you?
Because it sounds very similar. I was at JBLM. It was a big problem out there. It was when I was out there at the First Corps Commander. It was the property out there was the #1 property market in the country. And I don't know if.
Sir, I'm currently stationed in Fort Carson, so the Colorado Springs surrounding area.
And I was the installation commander there as well, so I'm very familiar with that. So I think there's a couple of things. We talk about this all the time, and one of the things that I did up at JBLM, so I think this is, to your larger question, some of this is capitalism, and it's very frustrating to us. When you go out there and they're facing inflation, and so everybody's looking at the same thing. So one of the things that we've just discussed, because it happens at different locations, is there a way that we could give a tax break to people who rent to the military, that it might be a way that we could do that we could keep the cost down. I don't have anything specific to you right now, because we don't control all the people out there that have housing, and you're out there competing with everybody else for a house, and I think that is a challenge. The other big thing that I noticed when, like at JBLM, for example, when you're looking at rent, was credit checks were a challenge, where you were going to live. So we actually hired some real estate experts out at JBLM, set up a specific office to help people when they were coming in, and we tried to find military-friendly renters. And so what we would help them with is getting the right people. They knew that soldiers and their families coming in were going to be, take care of their place, and they could have, consistent renters that were in there. And then we were also able to reduce a lot of the credit checks, so credit checks was typically a problem out there, and I don't know if that's still a problem out at Fort Carson, but that was one of the problems. You go to different locations, weren't able to get the house. And then whatever you had to put, we also had challenges with how much did you have to put down as a deposit. So I think that there's ways that we can do that. The only other thing that I'll mention is, and I did this out at Joint Base Lewis McChord, was you can do out-of-cycle BAH. You actually put it in and say, hey, we need to do something, the price is gone, because we do this DOD-wide. And the last thing I'd mention just to everybody, I constantly encouraged when the housing survey came along, was getting everybody to take the dang survey and make sure that they were inputting the data and talking about the real costs. And what our DPW was doing was there were certain areas that we knew people didn't necessarily want to live because of the neighborhood, taking those out of the survey area as far as what the cost was in the local area. So it's a pretty complex, there's more to that formula. I'm looking over at General Jones. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I think I got most of it.
I'm sorry, let me add a point about the survey. It's absolutely critical to get the accurate data. And the garrison commanders and DPW support the senior commanders. And sir, to your point, the senior commanders, as they designate those neighborhoods where Army families are actually living, making sure that's where we're getting the data, so it really reflects that true cost and impacts the families. But those garrison teams will do that to support the senior commanders and make sure that it's reflecting as those BAH rates are calculated. Yes, sir.
So there may be a cheaper place where the rent's cheaper right outside, but it may be not where military families want necessarily to live. And so we want to take that off of the survey and make sure that the cost is calculated, and I think that helps as well.
I think the other thing we can do, as General George says, this is a little bit, the dark side of capitalism, if you will, because, landlords are doing what, is in their own interests, and it is sort of, I call it kind of the housing arms race, where you just have this like escalating set of increasing rents, for example. But so I think what we need to be doing is, at our level here nationally, the chief and the SMA and I need to be talking to members of Congress, to the members who sit on our oversight committees, and highlight this issue to them. And our garrison commanders and our senior commanders out at installations need to be talking to the mayors, to their congressional delegations, because one of the things we do when we decide where to increase our force structure, for example, we've got a lot of new capabilities coming into the United States Army in the next few years, and we're deciding where to put them all around the country. And we do something called military value analysis, where we sort of look about where do we have enough space to do training, but we also look at community value analysis. How supportive are the communities around our installations? And that's a way for us to put a little pressure, frankly, on some of the property owners, is to work with the business community and the local authorities to say, hey, if you all are constantly raising rates every time we raise BAH, that's not supporting us, and frankly, it's just making it harder for everyone in Colorado Springs to be an affordable place. So I think that's something we can be doing maybe a little more of, is to kind of highlight this dynamic and show how it's in kind of all of our interests collectively to bring a little bit of a stop to that.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have another mic. You can direct your question to one of the Army senior leaders if you like.
Yes, good morning. For families like mine enrolled in EFMP, we've seen a lot of changes in the program in recent years. But when the quality of life initiatives came out for all Army families this year, we realized that we were left out of the topic in every single one of those. Our families experience all of those issues for different reasons. And so the question we have is, what's being done to address the specific needs of EFMP families within the quality of life initiatives?
Yeah, why don't I start with that? We know that there are a lot of challenges for our families who are in the EFMP program, and we are trying to better support that program. I'm sure you're familiar with the EFMP system that we put in place to try to sort of make it easier to be in the program. One of the things we're doing is creating an office at headquarters to really try to help oversee that and make it more customer friendly. I think we very much want to support folks who are part of that program in the best way possible. So if there are specific areas where you feel like we're not meeting your needs, we want to hear about those. I will say that one of the challenges I think we're facing that touches us across the board on healthcare is the shortage of just healthcare professionals, whether it's behavioral health or other kinds of doctors, nurses, medical specialties. And because of those shortages, I think it is creating cases in some places where families who are enrolled in the program may not be able to be assigned, whereas they were 5 or 6 years ago. But what's changed is the availability of providers sometimes has decreased in the last couple of years. So I think that's a particular challenge that we've got to work through, but it's a national one.
And that's one that's come up on a couple trips we've been on, and we've gone straight back to our G9 teammates to feedback on the app and feedback from families, but also the providers trying to figure all that out. So I mean, just so it hasn't fallen off. I mean, that's the main thing I want you to know. Matter of fact, that was a month ago we were having this discussion.
Right.
I would be interested, just maybe not for now, is what feedback you had on the app, because one of the other things that we said was, hey, some people had some trouble working with it. So to the secretary's point, if specifics, and then hopefully we could get that also on the app so that we can deal with those things when they come up.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. State your question and direct it to one of the ASLs. Thanks.
Good afternoon, good morning, ma'am, sir, Sergeant Major, Lieutenant Colonel Bonner, Army Reserve, AGR. So my question has to do with homeschooling families in the military. And so those of us that choose to do that in PCS a lot, you find that every state has different rules on how you can homeschool your children. And sometimes in some locations you can't at all. And so what I'm asking is for the Army or DOD to look at something that helps soldiers navigate that prior to either getting PCS orders or getting to that state and realizing that they can't educate their children consistent with their cultural and religious traditions. Over.
Thanks for that question. I know that, frankly, the population of families that homeschool has really grown in the last few years. And as a matter of fact, my husband, we're a second marriage, but my husband's kids were homeschooled, and he was a Navy officer, and I know they had some challenges. I think that's something we should take back. I don't know, General Vereen, whether you have more to say about how we can make sure that we're getting information out for our soldiers and families about states' different approaches to homeschooling, but I think it's something we should look into, because again, I know that the number of people in this country who are homeschooling, for whatever reasons, has grown significantly.
Right. No, ma'am. Absolutely. We'll take that one on. We do know since COVID, I mean, schooling has significantly changed, and so we do have an enormous amount of families, I think, that are doing that now, and not going to put them back into normal schooling, and that's fine. But that's one I think we can take and we can kind of work with you. So if you can just make sure to connect with either me after the session, I'll be interested to get your details. So thanks.
I want to add, this is one thing, again, what you're asking about is information. And so one of the things, and this will be helpful feedback if you could provide that, like I mentioned earlier on the app, and there's, the big schools is obviously one of the big buckets when you're moving that you want to know about, whether it's homeschooling or something else, because in my experience, raising our kids, and they had 3 different high schools, every time they moved, it was, this, you had to know you have to take this history before that, and we went through that at every location. So I think what we need to do is provide wherever you're moving, and I've had the discussions already. This needs to be, it's the same for Compo 2 and for Compo 3 where you're at when you're moving, to make sure we have that local information. So we'll have to tailor that specifically, not just to installations, but across all 3 compos, and we're talking about that already.
Okay. All right. Cards, mics in the room. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Back in the back.
Right in the middle.
Hi, thank you. Karen Rudicelli with the Military Officers Association of America. I have a question about TRICARE. TRICARE was a key component of the compensation and benefits package that sustained the all-volunteer force over 20 years of war. Over the last several years, we've seen several cuts to TRICARE, including fee increases and decrements to access, such as the recent pharmacy network cut. And we are concerned at MOA about the potential impacts here, not only on readiness, operational readiness, family readiness, but also on recruiting, as military families and retirees who are being hit with one decrease to the next on the TRICARE benefit become less likely to recommend military service to current and future generations. We know that the Defense Health Program budget has been under considerable pressure, and so the question is, what can we do to protect this benefit, to make sure that commitments are fulfilled to those who've served and that the benefit is there for future generations? Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Karen. And if we have someone from our Surgeon General's office, they might be able to give you more details. But I think, healthcare benefits obviously are a huge issue. And one of the things that I think we really need to work on with DHA is making sure that we have as many providers as possible around the country who accept TRICARE. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is the number of providers who are accepting TRICARE is going down in some areas. So that's something we need to work on. I will say we had a big meeting. Secretary Austin chaired a meeting a couple of months ago looking broadly at the military health system, and General Crosland, who I think some of you may have been able to talk to earlier this week at a smaller family forum, she was there. And actually, I think from a recruiting perspective, the healthcare benefits that we offer through TRICARE are still very, very competitive with private sector insurance, if you will. We have a lot of data that shows how TRICARE stacks up compared to civilian care. And as someone who frankly has spent most of my life on the civilian side of health insurance, the grass is not greener, I will say. There are a lot of challenges, on the private sector side as well. So I think we do need to focus on making sure we are vigilant and shore up our healthcare system. But I think it's quite competitive with a lot of the private health insurance companies.
I think we have Surgeon General. Go ahead.
Secretary Wormuth. Hey, I'm Brian Line. I'm General Crosland's deputy, who does a lot of this stuff and responsible for the TRICARE health plan. So you're correct. We've had lots of changes to the TRICARE health plan, the TRICARE dental plan, the TRICARE pharmacy plan that have all come out from congressionally directed requirements. And so we have to answer to Congress on that. I fully agree with Secretary. We have to get more people into our hospitals, doctors, nurses, physicians, and we're working aggressively on changing some of our title authorities so that we're competitive with the VA, so that we're not just held to Title X responsibilities, but we're actually able to hire and compete with the VA because the VA can pay their doctors and their nurses and their technicians more. So getting that same authority to us to be able to hire people immediately out of school and to pay them more to have them work within our military treatment facilities. Since COVID happened, a lot of private insurers no longer accept TRICARE. And so around many of even our large places like Fort Cavazos and Fort Liberty, the numbers of people that actually accept TRICARE have gone down. And so what we're seeing is increased length of time to get appointments out in the civilian sector. How we're trying to answer that is obviously bringing more people within the military treatment facility, but also using a lot more virtual appointments. So not everybody needs to be seen face to face. And so by expanding our virtual capability, either real time or they put in a consult and they'll be seen asynchronously where we can answer the question, or the doctor can actually talk to the primary care provider, the nurse practitioner, the PA that's taking care of them to answer the question so that they don't have to get referred out. And so we're establishing virtual care networks across the Department of Defense to be able to get after some of those things. Ma'am, I hope that helps answer your question.
Okay. We're going to go back to the far back here in the corner.
Well, after you, thanks to the honorable panel. I really would like to have like a question, like importance question in a form of comment. It's very seducing to take care of the material part of the quality of care because it requires a huge budget. But I recall the Honorable Christine last year saying about how a strong, resilient, trained army is essential. So what is the focus on the mental health and the aspects of, I would say, mind resilience? I have been volunteering for the last 15 years out of Kuwait, the Association of the U.S. Army, and I can see appreciation of even volunteer resilience programs done in the installation. So in other industries like finance, there are 60% that don't admit that they are subject to one way or another from mental illness. It's a taboo, and I think the Army is the most significant in the world, especially the United States. So I would volunteer in resilience programs myself, and I would like to know your take on that. Thanks so much.
Sure. I'll say a couple things, and I know General George has strong feelings about resilience, and the SMA does as well. One, you know, our health and holistic fitness program puts a lot of emphasis on building resilience for our soldiers, and I think we've seen some really powerful results from that program, and we're actually trying to expand our investment in the health and holistic fitness sets that we've been bringing into the force. The second thing I would say is a lot of our installations have resilience programs. Like I was at Fort Riley earlier this summer, and they have a program called Operation Victory Wellness that is really aimed at wellness, you know, physical wellness, mental wellness, building resiliency, and again, they've seen very positive results. They've seen, you know, an actual measurable decline in harmful behaviors at Fort Riley, you know, whether it's prevention of suicides or fewer DUIs, fewer domestic violence incidents. And you know, I know we have other installations around the country that have programs like that. So I think they are really important.
Yeah, first, we love volunteers, so I heard you say you're going to volunteer, so we'll sign you up right after this. But I think the other thing, too, I always start with units that are out doing their unit mission and training together and doing tough, realistic training. I think that builds resilience and doing those kinds of things. And we have statistics generally bear that out when they're out and they're, you know, communicating directly. They're not on their phones and they're doing the things that they're doing, which I think is important. And obviously critical to us as Army to make sure we maintain readiness. The other things are that we look at, and again, this gets back to the programs. A lot of the times when people have challenges, their relationship challenges or their financial challenges. And I like to tell everybody, if I'm thankful that when I was a private, that, you know, I didn't have to buy a really expensive phone and have the ability to sign up for Hulu and YouTube and all those other things that I know are very tempting out there. But, you know, financial things as well, because I think that presents challenges in people's lives. So you kind of mentioned it in your question. I think health and holistic fitness is a broad approach to things, and it starts in the units. And again, we want to tailor that. It's different at Fort Irwin on what they need and the gyms and the things that are there and the food that's available and all of that we tailor it to each individual location. And it's the same thing with being able to provide health care. That all changes depending on what location that we're at, so.
Great.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add on that, and I know the Secretary and the Chief are passionate about this, and we were just down at Moore. I mean, it's unfair to assume that all the soldiers coming in right now are coming in with some of the same backgrounds that we had. And so, you know, that onboarding that the Chief was referencing a couple questions ago, that really begins at the first contact with a recruiter, then the MEP station, and then when you board the bus or the plane and you go to your basic and AIT. And we're leaning into adding some life skills training in there, and they're already doing this. We're just going to lean into it a little bit more because it's a bad assumption to think that every soldier, to the Chief's comment on, you know, managing your finances, has the same level of knowledge, came into the Army with that. So we're leaning into that across the Army to build some resiliency before the life stressors that we know are inevitable, because that's life. So that's one thing we're also doing instead of just waiting. Because again, resiliency starts left, way left, right? You want to be good at a 12-mile road march, you better start road marching way left. It's very similar in this space.
Great. Hey, so we're going to just make one quick change. There's some great topics, and it looks like we talked about schooling, TRICARE, spouse employment, some of our medical challenges, and holistic health and fitness. So let's see what the next question here, Minty, and we kind of get some audience participation if we can do that. Maybe drive okay. All right. So when you discuss as a family whether you continue to serve, what impacts your decision most? And we're looking at this. I got to go to the big screen.
Should have brought my glasses.
I did bring my glasses. I can't see it.
Salary.
Okay. Looks like salary and operational tempo. Okay. Army senior leaders, you want to talk about one of those?
Okay, yeah, I'll start. So first, on the salary side, maybe I know the Sergeant Major of the Army has been involved with this with the quadrennial defense review. So that's in progress right now of taking a look at what we're going to do. And I know there's been cost of living increases based on inflation over the last couple of years, but they're looking at that holistic. I'll talk a little bit about the operational tempo thing because I think that's critically important, and it does, and that's been my experience as well. And it's one thing to be doing your mission. It's another thing, oftentimes operational tempo is not just deployments, it's how long are you in the field, when are you at home, what are the other things that you're doing? And so we are focused on that. And I said this yesterday at the Eisenhower lunch and been talking to leaders throughout the Army, what are the things that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing that are taking time away from being home? There's several of those I can give that I mentioned yesterday with how much we're maintaining vehicles as an example, or how much you have to look after your equipment. We have 100 captains, NCOs, first sergeants, warrant officers that we are meeting with today. We posed this specific question to them on Monday. What specifically should we take a look at? What is causing, what is taking your time? We obviously have to train for our mission. We're going to continue to do that. The Army is in high demand, and that's been the case for many years, but what are the things that we can reduce? And then we also have to we do have to learn to say no on certain things, and that's exercises. We are looking at how we can line up exercises better so that we can get after, let's say you're doing a CTC rotation and a warfighter and all those things that line up. So I think there are things that we can do to get after operational tempo, besides what we're going to get back from the company commanders and first sergeants that we're talking to today. This is a topic that we're asking all of the leadership to come back to us when we have our professional forum here in about 2 months.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is predictability, and the chief spoke to this, I think, in the press conference that we all did on Monday, is, if we're able to give our soldiers and families more predictability, I think that helps with the operational tempo piece. And I know I was struck when I first became secretary, a number of our 4-star generals and 3-star generals that talked to me said that training management was a skill that some of our more junior officers weren't as proficient in as when they were at that level earlier in their careers. And I think, over the long years of the global war on terror, that wasn't something that we spent potentially quite as much time on. So I think really making sure that we're emphasizing the importance of training management to try to give our soldiers and families as much predictability as we can give, in what is, unfortunately, a pretty unpredictable world right now. And some of that is inherent in the job of the United States Army to protect this country. There's some unpredictability, but we want to do everything we can to give as much as we can.
I actually appreciate you saying that, Madam Secretary, because again, the op tempo piece, it's a tough one, right? again, I'll be a little careful here, but there's no such thing as utopia in this space because of the unpredictability of the world right now. And I think it's important that families need to understand that. That's part of our journey here in the Army. We also are charged with being able to fight and win anytime the nation calls upon us at night. I've spent a lot of time not deployed, but on reverse cycle, training at night. So I was actually sleeping at home when my family was, it is tough. It is really tough. I think the predictability that the chief was referencing is what my family wanted, even with a tough training schedule prior to deploying, prior to what we knew during the global war on terror as a traditional deployment. That gave us certainty. That gave my daughters some certainty. We could plan around that. And that's the training management thing, I think, that the Secretary is referencing, that I know we're crashing hard on that coming out of COVID. We absolutely are. We've picked up how much training we're doing because we came out of COVID. We knew we needed to get after it. And so you're going to hear a bunch of that. You're actually going to hear some of that in the next, in my forum this afternoon with FORSCOM and TRADOC about training management and how we get after this. But I really think the piece that's critical for the family and the soldier is the predictability. But it will change. And I think it's important for us to be honest about that.
Great. Okay. We have a card. Okay, up front. Go ahead.
Good morning. Melissa Kreitzer. I am an Army veteran. I am a Army civilian professional of 28 years, and I'm a proud Army spouse. We have a very strong forum at each installation called the Commander's Ready and Resilient Council. This is a forum for change, allows us to elevate our issues, our concerns, and amplify all of the great things that we're doing at each installation. The problem I see is, and this is different from each place we go, there is not enlisted or spouse presentation at these forums. And these are the voices of our enlisted soldiers. These are the voices of our spouses to get after these things that affect our readiness. Things like spouse employment, talking about maybe dedicating some of these huge vacancies at these installations to military spouses so that we can have smooth transitions, so that we can eliminate the vacancies, and then we can have our spouses investing in our community and our community investing in our military families. Things like EFMP, where we have spouses that are ready to get out there and pound the pavement and go and see which one of these providers are interested in receiving TRICARE. There's several SFRGs that already go out and do this in their communities. And, and the soldiers, they want to go to these warrior restaurants, but they want to go there and be able to access Wi-Fi. And a lot of these places don't have that. So if we're wanting to bring them out, not just to eat, but to see each other and to look in the eyes of their battle buddies and see that they're doing okay, we got to give them something that brings them there. Good food, Wi-Fi, maybe a coffee bar, something like that. Bring it into the new age. So that they can enjoy each other in a place to build those cohesive teams. Thank you.
Great.
Well, I'll jump on that one first.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm
definitely going to jump on that one.
I think I just added R2Cs, Ready and Resilience Centers, to my list of things to go visit when I'm on trips. I will take that one for action on the lack of enlisted. What installation are you referencing? Actually, don't say that. Don't say that. That's unfair. I don't want to do that. Okay, thank you. I'll take that one for action. I'm pretty passionate about that one, especially I started off with my spouse's involvement and all that. So I think that's a space we could make some improvement in there, because I do think they have they could be an advocate big time there.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you where you were coming from as well, but decided not to. But that was not my experience where I was at, because we had all those people in the room and we're talking about that. So my point is, and I'm hoping that all the installation commanders and sergeant majors are listening to this as well, that's exactly what you should be doing. And I don't really call it, I've always had a problem specifically with programs, because I think that's, you don't need a program to tell you that you got to bring your whole community together and start talking about how, to make your community strong, family stronger, soldiers stronger, and all of those things. And sometimes with programs that come up, like you mentioned with CR2C, we can start doing briefs that become more compliance-based with, hey, what are you doing? And they're from up here. And you have something very specific that you need at your installation. So that's what we are doing right now with we're doing the building cohesive teams is what we're chairing up at our level. And what we would like to do is hear from communities, what do you need specifically so that we can, provide you the funding and let you prioritize the funding. And it's not a program from up here. We're giving resources to make sure that you can have the right program, because it is a little different, as you said, at every one of your installations. There's over 300 programs in the Army on the people side, and I don't even want to tell you how much money we spend on them, but there's a lot of zeros. And in my experience, when I would go out to different locations, some of those were really working well, and some of them not so much. But if we're directing them from up here, then they're operating, but they may not be doing what you want at your local level. So I think that's the kind of feedback that I was talking about with the Army Family Action Plan and getting together, and we'll rev that up and make sure that we're getting that.
I did just want to add on dining options in particular. That is something that we're trying to work on. A couple of things. One, we're trying to bring in more sort of flexibility and more options for our soldiers using things like food trucks or kiosks in barracks. So, for example, I was at Fort Wainwright quite a while ago, and I saw some really great kiosks right there in the barracks, which is particularly important when the weather gets as cold as it does in Alaska. We're also trying to give meal prep options at DFACs so that soldiers can go in and actually, get something to go that they can then, microwave later in their barracks, recognizing a lot of our soldiers have unusual hours. And then we're also trying to do some pilots looking at making some of our Warrior restaurants look more like what you would see on college campuses, where you can just go to take your card and sort of swipe it at different kind of, different food choices, for example. So we're going to run a few pilots there, and I think, Wi-Fi and the DFAC, that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking of, because they are, if done right, an opportunity to bring soldiers together and contribute to building that cohesiveness and helping our soldiers form relationships.
And the key piece there, you said it, it's different at each installation. So AMC is working a bunch of different options to ensure that the installation commanders that IMCOM assists have what they need based off of the footprint and the tenant units that they have there.
Okay, all right. We've got a question here up front.
Good morning. Krista Anderson. I'm a Gold Star spouse as well as a spouse of a retired soldier. First, I just wanted to say thank you. The opening ceremonies, when you mentioned casualty the way that it used to be, I can, firsthand say how far it's come, being a member of the Survivor Advisory Working Group for the Army. So thank you for everything that you've done over the years. One of the things that we've discussed is if a service member passes away and the family is OCONUS, there is that one move. First of all, their visa essentially expires because their sponsor passes away, and their visa expires within about 90 days. That may not be able to be changed, but the PCS portion of it, where their blue bark move, that last move, they're coming back to the United States, for example. Not all of them, but most of them are coming back to the United States. And they can store their household goods and then move, but we've looked at what it would be like to give them 2 moves, right? So that they can go temporarily to a home and then make that last blue bark move. Have you looked into that?
I'm not sure if we've looked at that specifically, so I would ask, again, maybe our G9 or IMCOM or IE&E, if we've looked into that.
So G4, is somebody from G4 in? Or okay, go ahead. Yeah, he's standing up. So it's...
Hey, this is Major General Smith from G4. So we have not looked at that specifically, but we will absolutely bring that into our transportation policy section to look at it. Right now, for the last move for other categories, they have up to 3 years to move. But I think what you're mentioning right there nests very well with inside of our current policy. So we'll absolutely take that on and provide you feedback. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I think we've got one card up front. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Master Carrick. I'm active duty. I have a question that kind of approaches three of the main subjects: unemployment, our spouse unemployment, retention, and EF&P. Currently, with the TRICARE contracts and echo nursing, spouses or the primary care providers have to stay at home with the nurse. They're not authorized to go to work or to go to school. So my question is it possible for TRICARE echo nurses to be approved to provide care in military CDCs to provide options for working military families with complex children?
I think that's something we can look into. I mean, that's a very sort of specific set of circumstances, but I think we can look into that.
Dr. Lean, can you talk about that?
Yeah, we'll be happy. Please I'll be here afterwards. I'll stay as long as I need to answer all the questions for medical or TRICARE. We'll be more than happy. This is the first time I've heard of that suggestion, and so be more than happy to take a look at that and bring that back to the TRICARE program, our EF&P program on this. So I'll be over here at the end of the conference. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. It's right here where the card is in front.
My name is Cadet Nally. I'm from Missouri S&T. My question is about deployment rotations. As the Army shifts our focus back to near-peer conflict, for the past 20, 30 years, we've had rotational deployments. If we get into another peer-to-peer conflict, do you think the Army will be able to maintain rotational deployments, or will we be forced to go back to indefinite deployments like that of World War II?
Okay, I'll take a shot at that. A big question. Obviously, it would depend on. I think we would obviously have to be prepared. No one wants that. What we're out doing right now with all of our deployments, our deterrence and assurance missions, building up our network of partners and allies through our exercises and all of those things. That's what basically peace through strength, and continue to do that and make sure that we're ready. But of course, I could envision really bad scenarios where it would take the whole Army and we would have to mobilize, Compo 2 and 3, which is why they need to, we have readiness for all of our compos for our total Army, and then to make sure that we're prepared to actually mobilize if that was going to happen. So I think that as an Army, that's our mission. That's what we have to be prepared for, first and foremost, for our country, and that's what we are training to do.
What ROTC program are you in?
Missouri S&T.
You said Missouri?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, Major. Missouri S&T.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, we're going to take a final question, I think, from the audience, and then we're going to come back to Minty for the last one. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Charles Stewart. I'm a technologist and a reservist. I get to support our HRC Innovation Command. Both the Secretary and the Chief, you talked about the difficulty of our soldiers and our families finding the information and the services that they need in real time. I can speak for my wife. She'd rather deal with Comcast than try to find information from the Army.
Oof, that hurts.
Wow.
That hurts.
Wow.
That would hurt, but I agree with you, actually.
Let's talk about the digital experience for our family members and soldiers, how quickly and easily they can find what they need when they need it. We haven't seen a lot of changes in those experiences, and what we're planning to do to improve that. Thank you.
Okay, I want to jump in on that.
I was going to say, this is all you.
Yep. Yeah.
The Chief's new app.
Yeah,
I know what we're doing.
It's not the Chiefs app. I mean, we have soldiers working on this right now.
Software.
And they have interviewed hundreds of spouses, soldiers at all different levels, so that you get the same kind of user experience. So for example, if you're a soldier, single soldier, you don't need you may not care that much about childcare or schools or whatever else. And it'll individually tailor to you, because we know the technology exists out there to do that. So yeah, there's a QR code. I'm going to get your name afterwards and make sure that I get your feedback specifically on it. You sound like a digital native. But we are looking for feedback on this, and they started about 2 weeks ago. That's it. Maybe less than that, 10 days. And Tavia and James, I don't know if they're in here. Are they in here?
Oh, they're in the back.
Come on up here. I think this is important because, again, we have a lot of resources in the Army, and we want to provide them. It's just hard, and people say, hey, I couldn't find this, or we don't have this, and oftentimes we have it. And if we don't have it at the Army, come on up here. Explain what you're doing, Tavia and James.
Yeah. And where you're at.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
Explain where you're at also.
All right, good morning. Captain Tavia Clark, product designer at the Army Software Factory. We have our team here, product engineers, Ben Hunter, Igor, and as well Chris Pauley. And within 2 weeks ago, like the Chief of Staff of the Army said, we got this problem set, talking to a lot of personnel, soldiers on the ground, family members, a big population of soldiers, junior soldiers, NCOs. We was able to get that feedback and understand what is the problems that people really experience. A lot of it was the quality of life problems, and essentially a lot of stuff what we're speaking to, getting that information, ease of use, tailoring it to a solution that you're able to get the information up front in real time that you find useful is important to us, important to soldiers, important to family members. And so we have My Army Post where you can fill out a QR code, get the feedback to us so we can improve and iterate on it as we continue to build and develop.
So we had the toughest audience. We did get a bunch of spouses together to look at this. And so as an example, one of the things that was really impressive to me is you want to know what the gate hours are, and it'll actually show you the gate. It'll show you how much traffic is at the gate. Is the traffic backed up? Maybe you need to go somewhere else. All of those things, little simple things to make life easier when you're on an installation, and it can be very tailored to when you're coming new to an installation. It will tailor the experience to you. So these are these are nerds. I mean that in the most compliment.
That's a compliment.
That's a compliment nowadays. It wasn't when I was growing up. Now everybody wants to be a nerd. So super impressive what they can all do and put this together. We are going to put this out, and they're defining this, and we just briefed all of the 4-star leaders, and General Jones was in. We're going to make this happen, and it's going to come out to the Army, and we want your feedback on what else you need. So
let's hear it for these great Army Software Factory folks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Tavia.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, nerds. All right, great, awesome. Hey, so we're gonna do one final question. I think we'll go back to Minty because this really is gonna give us like our long-range vision of what we're gonna do and think where we are and where we need to go based on your feedback. So they're rank ordered, as you see, and I think those are the different areas. They're moving now. That we are looking at, that you have interest in, and you think the Army should prioritize moving forward. So, all right. Wow. Oh. Okay.
It's like a horse race.
It is.
Yeah.
It's almost like the NFC East when the Commanders are moving up to the top. So I knew I'd strike a nerve.
Yeah.
All right.
They're
okay.
awake.
So looks like healthcare, housing and barracks, PCS moves, childcare, spouse employment. Okay. They're all important. I think we have a sort of a good list of topics I think we need to focus on when it comes to quality of life. So we have just a few minutes left, but I want to allow the Army senior leaders to have some closing comments. So we're going to start with the Sergeant Major of the Army. Sergeant Major Weimer.
Okay. Hey, really quickly, these topics are incredibly important. Like I started off with, I want to know when I'm traveling. I want to know what's going on at each one of the installations. And my wife's a big part of that. And the sergeant majors, I think it's important for you to know that the sergeant majors know this has a direct impact on readiness. That's why your comment down here in the front kind of got me a little bit going. And so I think this is a space coming out of COVID and coming out of the global war on terror a little bit. We can make some headway here. Now, that doesn't necessarily help with budget stuff that the secretary started off with, but engaged leadership is being slightly intrusive, right? That is truly what, if you're not slightly intrusive, you're not really as engaged as you think you are. In this non-commissioned officer business, especially when you reference barracks and housing, knowing how the status of your soldiers' barracks, knowing the status of your soldiers' housing. The healthcare piece, we're struggling on the healthcare piece, but the non-commissioned officer should probably be first to know when somebody's struggling with something with healthcare. Because again, that's being cohesive, that's being a good teammate, knowing that. And so getting that up is incredibly important. I think some of the most informed meetings I've had were over lunches when we were traveling with the command sergeant majors from across the entire installations and the first sergeants. Because there isn't anything going on an installation that a first sergeant does not know. And so I just want you to leave here today knowing that none of these surprised us today. We absolutely know they're important. We absolutely know these are priorities, and we're taking a look at each and every one of them. Now, they're all difficult, or wicked, as a good friend of mine would say. They're wicked hard problems, but they're righteous. And so I just want to make sure you know that we care about these things. Chief?
Yeah, the secretary brought up the budget, and I always remind people that we all have personal budgets too. You all take a look at it and go, hey, there's a lot of things I want. I always give the example of, having owned a house, there's a bunch of things I wanted to fix, but when the roof was leaking, that's what I generally did, and that's what I fixed. So I think we're taking a look at that, and like the Sergeant Major of the Army said, there's not one thing up there that we don't want to get after. I think what I'd be interested in, if everybody leave here and we could collect something through the G9, is in a lot of areas that I look in here, and I know DHA's working the healthcare, but we need to look at things that don't necessarily require money but will make us better, that are policy changes. I mentioned some of those on housing and how we were able to build things with Milcon. That we could make our money go a lot further if, changing some of the rules. We are, one of the things that we have talked about, and I know it's been looked at a long time, what do we do to reduce PCS moves? Same thing on childcare. I think that there's a lot, and I know the G9 shop has known that I've given some specific tasks, that there are things that we could do in that I think that could make us better, that are our own policies, that are our own things that we could maybe get out of our way a little bit, that I think would help some of those. So besides the money thing, we have to look at those inside each of those areas, because I think there's ways we can make ourselves better.
I would just wrap up, I think, by saying I spent a lot of time with the Army before becoming Secretary of the Army, but a lot of what I saw was the Army, downrange, whether it was in Iraq or Afghanistan or other parts of the Middle East or in Europe. I saw generally the pointy end of the spear, and a lot of what I focused on as a result of that was sort of how does the Army fit into the strategy? What kinds of force structure does the Army need? What kind of new weapon systems does the Army need? And that's where the Army gets a lot of attention in the press, for example. But since becoming Secretary of the Army, I've had much more of an opportunity to see, what happens at home, what happens in garrison, and to really deepen my appreciation for everything that families do to support our soldiers, and that all that our DA civilians do to support our soldiers and families, back here in the United States. And I just want you all to know that, whether it's healthcare or housing or childcare, we understand how important that is. Of course, you all of us want to have and need to have healthy families. We need to know that we've got medical care when we need it. We need to live in quality housing. And while, a lot of the news coverage may be about the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon system, we as leaders and all of the leaders across the Army understand how important it is to take care of our soldiers and families. And we are trying very hard to do that. We are looking at it from a money perspective, but as the chief said, there are a lot of things that are not about money that we can do to help ourselves. And these kinds of forums are terrific for us to make sure that we're focused in the right places and to bring to our attention some new things or some new concerns that we can maybe address. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning.
All right, let's give a round of applause to our Army senior leaders. Awesome. So at this time, I'm going to welcome Ms. Holly Daly back to close out this year's Family Forum. Holly.
Thank you, Lieutenant General Vereen, for mentoring today's town hall and also for your leadership, sir. So this is the end of our 2023 AUSA Family Forum series and your opportunity to provide us with your feedback. So we have an AUSA QR code up on the screen in the back and online for those of you who are online. So please take the time to complete this quick survey. This is really important for your feedback that we can share with our Army senior leaders. And if you complete this survey, it'll take you to our first digital swag bag so you can get all the resources that you heard today and throughout all the forums. On behalf of AUSA, I want to sincerely thank Secretary Wormuth. Thank you, and Sir General George and SMA Weimer, thank you so much for today's town hall, but sincerely thank you for your continuous dedication and support to all our service members and our families. Thank you also for providing all of us the opportunity to be all you can be. To the senior spouses and distinguished guests, thank you for your continuous support. To all our military families and service members, and especially our soldiers, thank you for being you. Know that we are here for you, we care, and we're listening. A special shout out to our AUSA chapters, especially Fort Leonard Wood, and all those who are having the watch parties for the town hall. Thank you for doing that this year. To the AUSA and Army staff that supported these forums throughout the week, Thea Green and Kevon Green, Brittany Rains, Kaylee Spielman, Senior Fellows, our new Senior Spouse Fellows, Rob Hanskin and Amy Rodick, thank you so much. You are truly appreciated in executing and planning these throughout the whole year. Thank you to our incredible and dedicated planning committee. We have a work group led by Ms. Dee Geis from Army G9, AMC, MCOM, TRADOC, FORCECOM, MedCom, the Army National Guard, and Army Reserve, and other members of the Army staff. They get together all throughout the year to provide you with these quality forums. So at this time, would you please join me and rise with I'm sorry, so I just lost my train of thought. Would you please join and rise with me as we thank and applaud our Army senior leaders as they exit the stage. All right, thank you, everyone. We will see you next year.